And by the time the meeting ended, silence had already delivered its verdict. People think wealthy families live happier lives. They don't. They simply hide their fractures behind expensive walls. I learned that young. My father, Arthur Mercer, built Mercer Development Group from nothing. By the time I was born, he already owned half the skyline in Manhattan. Luxury towers, commercial real estate, hotels, construction contracts worth hundreds of millions. To the world, Arthur Mercer was a legend. At home, he was something more complicated. Demanding, quiet, emotionally distant. My oldest brother, Michael, loved him for it. Michael wanted power from the moment he could speak. Even as a teenager, he dressed like an executive and talked like one too. Stephen was different. Stephen didn't care about discipline. He cared about attention. He loved expensive things. Fast cars, expensive watches, women who laughed too loudly at his jokes. And then there was me, the disappointment, at least according to them. I never cared about business meetings or investment portfolios. I liked books, history, people. At 16, while Michael studied stock markets and Stephen snuck alcohol into school dances, I spent weekends tutoring kids at local community centers. Stephen called me pathetic. Michael called me naive. Dad mostly stayed silent. That silence hurt worse than insults sometimes. One night during dinner, Michael asked me what I plan to do after graduation. I want to teach, I said. The entire table went quiet. Stephen burst out laughing first. Teach what? History. Stephen nearly choked on his drink. You're serious? I nodded. Michael leaned back slowly. Dad built an empire and you want to become a high school teacher? I looked toward my father. He cut his steak carefully before finally asking one question. Why? Because teachers mattered. Because my history teacher once stopped me from becoming someone angry and bitter. Because not every meaningful life had to be measured in dollars. But at 18 years old, I didn't know how to explain that properly. So I simply said, because I think it matters. Dad stared at me for several seconds. Not angry, almost confused. As if he genuinely couldn't understand choosing purpose over power. That was the first moment I realized I would never become the son my brothers were. And maybe not the son my father expected either. The older we became, the wider the distance inside our family grew. Michael joined Mercer Development immediately after college. Dad practically handed him a tailored suit and a corner office. Stephen followed 2 years later. Neither of them questioned their future. The company belonged to them. Everyone knew it. Everyone except me. I became a history teacher in Brooklyn. Small apartment, used sedan, student loans. Michael treated my life like a temporary phase. You'll eventually grow out of this, he told me once during a family dinner. Out of what? This fantasy that passion matters more than money. Stephen laughed from across the table. Seriously, Daniel, Dad's company makes more in an hour than your school pays in a year. I ignored him. By then, I was used to it. What surprised me was Dad. He never defended me, never insulted me either. He simply watched quietly. Sometimes I caught him staring at me during family dinners like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't understand. Then came the holidays. Those were always the worst. Michael showing off another promotion, Steven arriving with another expensive car, and me, the teacher, the poor son, the outsider. One Thanksgiving, Steven raised a wine glass and smiled at me across the table. "To Daniel," he said loudly, proof that one Mercer son still believes money doesn't matter. Everyone laughed awkwardly, even some relatives. I remember looking toward Dad, waiting, hoping, but he only lowered his eyes toward his plate. And in that moment, something inside me quietly gave up. Not anger, not hatred, just acceptance. I stopped trying to earn approval that never came. I focused on my students, my small apartment, my peaceful life. And over time, I convinced myself that was enough. Then my father got sick, and everything changed. The diagnosis came on a rainy Tuesday in October. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Terminal. I still remember the silence inside the doctor's office after those words landed. Michael immediately asked about treatment options. Steven asked about recovery percentages. Dad asked how long he had left. 3 different men, 3 different fears. The first few months passed quickly. Chemotherapy, specialists, private hospital rooms. At first, Michael and Steven visited regularly. But illness is exhausting, not just physically, emotionally. And eventually, their visits became shorter, then less frequent, then rare. Mine became more frequent instead. I started stopping by the hospital after work almost every evening. Sometimes Dad slept while I graded papers beside the window. Sometimes we talked for hours. And sometimes we simply sat in silence, watching rain slide down the glass. One night around midnight, I arrived to find him awake. The room was dark except for city lights glowing through the window behind him. "You came," he said quietly. Of course I came. He looked toward the clock. "It's late. You called." He studied me silently for several seconds, then asked, "Did Michael visit today?" I shook my head. "What about Steven?" "No." Dad gave a bitter smile. "They're busy." But both of us knew that wasn't true. People make time for what matters to them. I sat beside the bed quietly. After several minutes, Dad suddenly asked, "You still teaching?" I smiled faintly. "Still underpaid." That actually made him laugh. A real laugh. The kind I hadn't heard from him in years. Then silence returned. Finally, he looked toward the rain outside and whispered, "Your brothers think I don't notice." I frowned slightly. "Notice what?" "How differently they treat me now." I didn't answer, because he was right. Michael spoke to doctors like they were employees. Steven barely stayed longer than 15 minutes. But me, I stayed because he was my father, not because he was Arthur Mercer. And I think that difference slowly began changing something inside him. Cancer stripped pieces off my father month by month. The strong voice weakened, the broad shoulders narrowed. The legendary Arthur Mercer slowly became an old man sitting beside hospital windows. But something else changed too. He started seeing people more clearly, especially his sons. One evening, I arrived during a storm and found him furious. "What happened?" He pointed toward untouched hospital food. "Your brother brought accountants here." I blinked. "What?" Michael wanted me reviewing restructuring documents during chemotherapy. I stared at him in disbelief. Dad laughed bitterly. Imagine becoming a financial meeting before you're even dead. I sat quietly beside him. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, "Do you know what disappoints me most?" I shook my head. "That they think I don't know." That sentence stayed with me. Because beneath the anger, there was heartbreak. Real heartbreak. Over time, Dad started talking more openly late at night. Not about business. About regrets. "I taught your brothers how to win," he admitted once. "But I forgot to teach them when to stop." Another night he looked at me and said, "You know what money does?" "What?" "It reveals people." Then he stared out the window quietly. "So does sickness." That was the night I realized something important. My father wasn't just dying. He was judging us. Quietly, carefully, watching who stayed when there was nothing left to gain. And whether my brothers realized it or not, they were failing. Dad died 17 months after his diagnosis. Cold February morning, gray skies, heavy rain, hope. The kind of weather that makes cities feel quieter than usual. St. Mark's Chapel overflowed with people. Executives, politicians, construction workers, old friends. Hundreds came, because despite his flaws, Arthur Mercer mattered. I sat in the third pew staring at the casket while the priest spoke about legacy and family. But I barely heard him. I kept remembering hospital nights instead. The silence, the conversations, the regret in Dad's eyes near the end. Michael stood near the altar greeting executives before the funeral even ended. Stephen whispered jokes with investors near the back. Neither looked devastated. Tense? Yes. Distracted? Definitely. But grieving? I wasn't sure. After the service ended, Michael approached me immediately outside beneath the church awning. "Hargrove wants us downtown in an hour." Straight to business. Stephen lit a cigarette beside him. "You okay, Professor?" I ignored the comment. Stephen smirked. "What? Funeral made you emotional?" Michael sighed impatiently. "Can we not do this today?" Stephen shrugged. "I'm just saying Dad built an empire. Daniel built lesson plans." I looked at him calmly. At least I visited him. That shut him up instantly. For 1 second, real guilt crossed Stephen's face. Then it disappeared again. Michael stepped closer. "Listen carefully," he said quietly. "Dad already made his decisions. Don't create problems during the reading." And there it was. Not grief, not sadness. Fear. Fear about inheritance. I suddenly felt exhausted. "I'm not fighting anyone," I said. Michael relaxed immediately. "Good." That one word told me everything. They already believed they'd won. Hargrove and Associates overlooked Manhattan from the top floor of a polished glass tower. Dark wood walls, leather chairs, rain sliding against massive windows. The office smelled like expensive silence. Richard Hargrove greeted us personally. The old lawyer looked tired, like he'd been carrying secrets too heavy for too long. We sat around the conference table. Michael closest to Hargrove, Stephen beside him. I sat at the far end, same as always. Hargrove opened the folder carefully. Arthur Mercer's name gleamed across the cover. The room became silent immediately. "Your father requested no interruptions during the reading," Hargrove said calmly. Michael nodded impatiently. "Understood." The lawyer began reading. Charities first, scholarships, employee bonuses. Then the estate. Michael inherited 40% ownership of Mercer Development, the Manhattan penthouse, major investment accounts. Stephen inherited 35% ownership, vacation properties, luxury assets. Then came my turn. Hargrove adjusted his glasses. To my youngest son, Daniel Mercer. The room shifted subtly. I leave my personal watch collection and the sum of $20,000. Silence. Then Stephen laughed softly. Not loudly. Just enough. I stared at the table quietly. $20,000. That was it. Years beside hospital beds, years of loyalty, years of showing up, reduced to old watches and $20,000. For the first time that day, the pain became real. Not because of money, because suddenly every fear I buried for years came rushing back. Maybe my father truly had seen me as lesser. Stephen leaned back smirking. Well, I guess teaching really doesn't pay. Michael didn't stop him. Nobody did. I inhaled slowly, then stood calmly. That's okay. The room paused. Michael frowned. That's it? I nodded. Yes. No anger, no argument, no begging. Just acceptance. That's when Richard Hargrove slowly closed the folder, folded his hands together, and said, "In that case, there is one final instruction." The room instantly changed. Michael frowned. What instruction? Without answering, Hargrove reached beneath the table and pulled out a second envelope with my name on it. The room went completely silent. Stephen sat upright immediately. Michael's expression darkened. Hargrove looked directly at me. Your father instructed me to open this only if Daniel accepted the original will peacefully. I frowned. What is it? The old lawyer carefully broke the seal. Inside were legal documents. Several of them he read silently for a few moments before removing his glasses slowly. 3 months ago, he said carefully, Arthur Mercer established a private trust. Michael interrupted immediately. What trust? Hargrove ignored him. The trust contains controlling ownership of Mercer Holdings. I stared blankly. What does that mean? The lawyer slid the papers toward me. It means your father transferred majority ownership of Mercer Development Holdings to you. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Stephen laughed nervously. That's impossible. It is fully legal, Hargrove replied calmly. Michael stood abruptly. No. The single word echoed sharply through the room. You're telling me Heichi controls the company? Not the public company, Hargrove corrected. The holding company. And suddenly, Michael understood. His face drained completely. Because the holding company controlled the land, the reserve capital, voting authority, property leverage, everything that actually mattered. Stephen slammed both hands against the table. This is manipulation. I finally spoke. I didn't know about any of this. Stephen pointed at me angrily. You expect us to believe Dad trusted you over us? I looked at him quietly. I think Dad trusted the person who stayed. Silence swallowed the room. Heavy silence. Then Hargrove removed another paper from the envelope. There's also a personal letter. He handed it to me carefully. I recognized Dad's handwriting instantly. Weak now, shaking, human. I opened the letter slowly. And read. Daniel, if you are reading this, then you kept your promise. You stayed calm. Your brothers learned business from me. But you learned loyalty. During my illness, I watched carefully. I watched who treated me like a father and who treated me like an asset. Everything I built belongs with the person I trust most to protect it. I'm sorry it took me dying to finally say I was proud of you. Dad, my vision blurred slightly. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Michael quietly asked, What did he say? I folded the letter carefully. He said he finally understood the difference between loyalty and ambition. Stephen scoffed bitterly. So now you're king of the empire? I looked at him calmly. No. Then, after a pause, I'm just the son who stayed. And for the first time in my life, nobody at that table laughed at me again. The business world exploded within days. News headlines called the inheritance shocking. Investors panicked. Executives whispered. Analysts questioned everything. But inside Mercer Development, employees quietly celebrated. Because Michael and Stephen had spent years treating the company like a private kingdom, Massive bonuses, aggressive layoffs, luxury spending. Workers hated them. I discovered that quickly. One construction foreman shook my hand during my first site visit and said, "Your father finally picked the right son." That sentence stayed with me. The deeper I investigated company finances, the uglier things became. Michael approved reckless expansions. Stephen buried operational losses beneath accounting tricks. Millions vanished into ego projects. Dad knew. That's why he changed everything before he died. One rainy night, Michael came to Dad's old office after everyone else left. "You're cutting the Phoenix expansion." I nodded. "It's bleeding money." Michael rubbed his face tiredly. "That project was my idea." "I know." Silence. Then he looked toward the skyline and whispered, "You think I'm the villain now." I leaned back slowly. "I think Dad got scared." Michael's jaw tightened. "I built this company too." "You built numbers," I said quietly. Dad wanted something that lasted. That hurt him. I could see it. Then Michael finally admitted something I never expected. He was proud of you. The room fell silent. Michael laughed bitterly. "You know how hard that is for me to say?" I said nothing, because grief changes people differently. Before leaving, Michael paused at the door. "I should have visited more." I lowered my eyes. "Yes," I said softly. "You should have." Stephen never apologized. Not once. Instead, he became reckless. 3 months later, I discovered he'd been secretly moving company assets offshore through shell accounts. The confrontation happened late at night inside the executive boardroom while rain battered the windows outside. "You've been spying on me?" Stephen snapped. "I've been auditing the company." "You think Dad choosing you makes you better than me?" "No." "Then what?" I looked at him carefully. "It made me responsible." Stephen laughed bitterly. "You always wanted Dad's approval." The words hit harder than I expected, because part of them were true. He stepped closer. "You built your whole identity around being the good son." I stayed quiet for several seconds, then answered softly, "And you built yours around being useful." That shut him up instantly. The silence afterward felt enormous, because we both suddenly remembered the same image. Dad, alone in a hospital room, watching rain slide down glass beside machines that couldn't save him. I slid termination papers across the table. "The offshore transfers stopped tonight." Stephen stared at the documents in disbelief. "You'd fire your own brother?" I shook my head slowly. "No." Then, after a pause, "I'd protect Dad's company." Stephen looked at me for several long seconds, then laughed quietly. Not mockingly this time. Sadly, "You really became him." I looked toward the rain outside. "No," I said softly. "I became the version of him he wished he'd been sooner." Stephen said nothing after that. He simply grabbed his coat and walked away. That was the last time I saw him for almost a year. Months later, I stood alone in Dad's old office overlooking Manhattan. Snow drifted silently beyond the windows. On the desk rested Dad's old watch. The same watch publicly left to me in the original will. The one thing he carried during every major decision of his life. I picked it up carefully and noticed tiny words engraved beneath the leather strap. Words I'd never seen before. Character is revealed quietly. I stared at the engraving for a long moment, then smiled. Not because I won, not because my brothers lost, but because finally, I understood my father completely. People spend their lives mistaking silence for weakness, but silence watches. Silence remembers. And eventually, silence delivers its verdict.
People spend their lives mistaking silence for weakness, but silence watches. Silence remembers. and eventually, silence delivers its verdict.